Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Today I'm going to talk about how to negotiate with South Koreans. This is our agenda today. First, I will do a brief introduction on South Koreans culture. Then I will talk about the negotiation style of South Koreans. In the final part, I provide some recommendations on how to negotiate with South Koreans. Now let's move on to the first part. The South Koreans culture is strongly affected by Chinese culture. Confucianism originated in China, helped establish mass traditions that can still be found in modern Korean society. For example, the ethical code of conduct in social life and to show respect to the elders and families. These traditions and culture helps to establish the negotiation style of South Korea. Based on the Hofstede's cultural dimensions, we can see clearly from these two graphs that South Korea wins a high score in power distance, uncertainty avoidance, and long-term orientation, while receiving a low score in individualism, masculinity, and indulgence. So we can simply conclude that South Korea is a country that embraces hierarchy, believes in collectivism, have low tolerance on uncertainty, long-term oriented, and restrained. In this part, we need to notice that although South Korea received a low score in masculinity, the female are still in a weaker position in the society, especially in business conditions. After we have learned something about South Korean's culture, I will introduce the negotiation style with the help of this culture profile. Generally, we divided the negotiation process into three stages: differentiation, exploration, and exchange. In the first stage, differentiation is aimed to seek the information and try to establish negotiation relationship. In this stage, South Koreans will begin with a short talk or business card or gift exchange. They are very care about the orders, which shows the hierarchy. For example, the orders to come into the room or to sit down around the table. South Koreans are willing to spend a lot of time on gathering information, discussing various details, and trying to seek weaknesses on their counterparties. In this phase, information is rarely shared freely, as South Koreans believe that privileged information can help create bargaining advantages. On the other hand, business people in South Korea are usually not good at English. As they are preferred to communicate in an indirect way, it is unlikely for them to directly say, "Oh, I do not understand what you're talking about," or "Could you please explain that again?" Then when the negotiation goes into the exploration stage, the focus will transfer to solution seeking. South Korea will seek to develop long-term relationship and prefer distributive contingency bargaining. They are employed in a polychronic work style, which means they will put multiple actions and goals at the same time rather than discuss one by one. They are used to take holistic approach and may jump back and forth between topics rather than addressing them in consequential order. This will leave difficulty to the counterparty to identify their bargaining items. Meanwhile, they may use some bargaining techniques to help them gain the optimum benefit. They may raise as much as possible the bargaining mix items to help them gain more power and initiative in bargaining. In the final stage of negotiation, the exchange aims to manage the concessions and conflicts. For the South Koreans, they prefer to establish general agreement and then to work out the necessary details. Actually, South Koreans do not care about the written contract or the agreement because in their traditional view, the primary strengths come from the partner's commitment rather than the written documentations. As the business culture in South Korea is extreme hierarchy and strongly affected by collectivism, the decision making is group oriented, which means there may not be a clear decision maker in the whole negotiation process. It will bring confusion to their counterparties. So, how to deal with such negotiation? We can plan ourselves follow this culture profile. In the first stage, we should remember that status and face saving are two important elements. It is important for us to investigate the company's hierarchy and the negotiation team and to send the person in similar status in negotiation. Being polite is important, and we should try to follow all business ethics. For example, we should always bring more business cards than we need, and we should print our names, titles, or even our company's titles on the business cards in both English and Korean. As the South Koreans may suspicious on people who they do not know or with whom they do not have mutual contacts, it may be a good advice for us to hire an intermediary to help us bridge communication and culture gap. To make sure our South Korean friends will fully understand us, it is important for us to hire an interpreter, which can help us to ensure the effectiveness of the whole negotiation. In the exploration stage, we should first clear that our aim is to develop a long-term relationship with South Koreans. We should do a fully cited research on the company, the industry they are in, and the negotiation group members. Remember to keep calm, friendly, and patient, and it will never be a good advice to be aggressive. As our counterparty may use some bargaining techniques, we can return this like for like. But we should notice here, the time pressure technique may not be effectively because the South Koreans will be more patient and persistent than we expected, so that they can generally overcome this challenge. However, if the negotiation happens in our side, which means we are the host country, we can try this technique anyway. In the final stage, we as the counterparty should not be irritative and try to reach a quick decision. If you're asked to make concessions, ask the other side to reciprocate, because if you made an early significant concession, your counterparty may expect further compromise as the bargaining is still continuing. We should also leave ourselves sufficient room for concessions and prepare several alternative options. It also gives our counterparty some room to reject our proposals while preserving their face. As we have mentioned that South Koreans may not treat written assignment or contracts seriously, it is important for us to consult a local legal expert before signing a contract, because having a legal contract is usually important for a company in most countries. It is also a good advice to bring our own attorney to the negotiation table, but we should be careful when doing this because some South Koreans may treat this as a sign of mistrust. Now we have gone through all three negotiation stage, and the key point when negotiating with South Koreans is to be patient and be more patient than they do. Doing a detailed research on the foreign culture before negotiation will always be a good advice for us, especially when dealing with the culture like South Korean, which is very different from most Western countries or even their Asian neighbors. This is a reference list that I used for this presentation, and thanks for your listening. I hope we will all achieve success when negotiating with South Koreans in the future.